So pivoting now to a different topic, but a related one. If you've got all this data in an object store, just like data in any other kind of storage system, you have to start thinking about backup, and you have to start thinking about archiving, and you have to start thinking about basically second level or second tier applications like that. How do we protect data in object stores? Can you just tell the object store to protect it for you? Is that good enough? Or do we need backup for objects? Alex, do you want to start this one off?
Yep. So I think you summed it up actually in a post you did several years ago, which is prime directive of storage is not to lose data. So being a bit of a storage curmudgeon, I always slightly, up late at night thinking about whether or not my data is actually going to be safe. I was going to implement a new platform. I've actually been working on some stuff of late around platforms like Caringo and Filefly, where you have customers who have significant quantities of data. They don't know really how to manage it. They want to get that off onto an object store transparently to be able to free up capacity, performance, and so forth on primary systems. They're used to doing things like 7-year retention of data for legal requirements and so forth. And for me, I'm a little bit nervous actually. There are protective measures in object storage. So you've got versioning is obviously the simplistic one. And that's fine up until the point where you get an administrator who's just been given his P45 and he's not too happy.
You need to translate that into American.
So been given his pink slip.
All right, thank you.
And then, to the next level of legal hold potentially to stop somebody maliciously changing data. So at that point, do you need to be able to back that off to a separate system completely? And for me, I think I'd certainly have a level of comfort in doing that, but I think Enrico's probably got a lot of opinions on this because, with object store, as Howard mentioned earlier on, you're massive, massive quantities of data. How do you back that up?
I think the real question is it a backup or a replication where it's simultaneous access? That's the question that we have to understand. What's the difference anymore? When we start talking object and each array is protected, is there really a difference?
Well, there's a couple of things that a backup system is made to protect from. One is people, and the other is nature, right? So, and basically anything that's going to kill the item itself, right? And I think an object store can protect against both itself. It can. Doesn't mean it. They're always, something is an object store doesn't mean it has these features, but it does. A properly designed object store, you can say, I want this put into 3 locations or 4 locations or whatever, and those locations can actually be geographically separate. Mm-hmm. And you can specify, history, and you can specify immutability, and so that your P45 guy shouldn't be able to to access that. And I'm okay with a properly designed system. That being a place where I can put data and say, okay, I don't need to back that up in the traditional sense. And partly, just like I'm okay with, we spent a few hours at NetApp today. I've historically been fine with an all NetApp solution where I've got a filer with a bunch of snapshots replicated to another filer with a bunch of snapshots, and then I got another one, right? And I don't feel the need to dump that off to tape or something, right?
And it's interesting, Curtis, because that's one of those things that you and I have always disagreed on. And I'm always totally puzzled. How come Mr. Backup is okay with a storage-based backup, and Mr. Storage is not okay with a storage-based backup?
Yeah, I think
it's all about restorability.
If I could just give one answer to the question, part of it is that I keep running into these giant stores where there is no other way, right? So it's like I can't, give me all the tape drives and all the giant dedupe target systems in the world, and I can't back that up, and I certainly can't restore it in any level of
Think about building a system, a multi-petabyte system with a huge amount of end users using it. So each one of them with different policies for backup and whatever.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've met customers that are creating exabytes of data a week. Exabytes of data a week.
I got 2 real thoughts on it. The one thing that even the best object store won't protect your data against is a bug in that
That's the
code.
problem.
Single
If that's-
failure.
That
Yep.
if whoever your object vendor is has, the cockroach that ate Philadelphia and corrupts their back-end database,
Yeah.
then you're dead.
That's where.
And so on the one hand, we have to go, how well do I trust my vendor to have found a bug bigger than the system
Yeah,
itself?
but think about having a backup system that when you
you can't-
read back the data just to do the check, not to real data,
Yeah.
it says okay all the time.
Oh, yeah, no,
That's
even
good.
even if
That's-
the LTO is rotten or whatever. Okay,
Yep.
I'm saying. So there is a bug, and all the time
Right, that's the same problem.
It reads back the This is
Yeah,
what
it's
with
the,
everything.
It's the same problem.
Doesn't
and so,
that same risk exist today in software? If my application corrupts what it's writing, you have the exact same problem.
But as soon as you discover that that's corrupted, you can go to the
Fix
backup
it.
from before it.
No, so the application broke.
If you have an object store that's doing erasure coding across 3 locations and it corrupts your data is bye-bye.
Right, but that's where things like versioning come into play to help.
No. If the back-end file system has a bug that on January 1st of a year that ends in 62, we delete all the data.
Or every 7th bit gets flipped.
Well, or the Micron SSDs that if they're turned on for 400 hours, turn themselves crash. Bugs exist.
No.
But I would say, if you can't trust the object store you chose, then you don't back it up. You change the gateway ingest engine to write to 2 separate places and protect the data as it's created.
Whoa.
Because the quantity is too big to go. I'm periodically going to
But
back it
this
up.
creates another problem because he is talking about an end-to-end solution, and probably this end-to-end solution can't write to 2 different vendors' objects.
This particular one probably couldn't, but there's not to say if you didn't
Yeah,
have
there
2
are
separate
ones-
objects.
No, yeah.
No,
So you have
different code bases your developer could
instead,
write.
instead of getting the CIFS or NFS from the object store vendor, you put in a veer in front of it and it writes to
Yeah,
the
okay.
data and a clever
So I'm
stuff.
going to offer a different point of view because I used to be very much on Steven's side of this. I would say I was old school enough that I didn't consider a snapshot a
Did you just
backup.
call me old?
Old school. I consider that a compliment. Because I consider old school. So, to me, if there isn't a copy of your data somewhere else other than the storage array, it's not a backup. And it needed to be there. But I think, let me back up a second. So, like when I was a sysadmin, if a backup failed, nobody knew but me. As long as nobody called for it. If I failed to do a restore, that was an RPE, a resume producing event. And it was all over. So what I think we need, Curtis, you're going to hate this part. We need to stop talking about backup. It's an outdated term. We need to talk about data protection. What are we going to do to protect the data? It's bigger. It includes backup. But what is it we're trying to protect against? So in solutions where somebody is backing up, I think we should still use snapshots. Because my snapshot would be my restore of first resort, because it's so fast to get the data back. But I want to know that data, if a UFO flies over the data center tonight and abducts my rack, I want to know that I've got a copy of the data somewhere else.
I have had clients have all their servers stolen.
All the servers stolen, a meteor falls through the roof, crushes all the equipment. Anything can happen, but we need to think about what is it that particular customer is trying to protect against, and how can we make sure the data is going to.
Correct, it's a risk management issue. So
Yeah.
like what you're talking about, it's not possible. Of course it's possible. Anything is possible. Pigs can fly given sufficient thrust.
They do.
If you have, like you're saying, so we've got this multi-petabyte, we're generating exabytes a day. It's like, okay, do I need all of it? Like if I'm generating that much new data, how much of that data am I actually going to need?
You're
and
certain
why?
you don't know.
The
And
apps
why?
that I'm talking about, all of it.
Well, or if you're talking an
Yep.
object store, is backup really an infrastructure problem, or is it an application design? Right? Do
Well,
you
and
design
that's-
your application in such a way that you're writing
Yeah.
to multiple object stores?
And this is where we get into one of those issues that we've traded off. It's a trade-off, and we've done this in multiple ways. HA, an infrastructure resiliency exists because applications were designed to, because writing really resilient applications is hard. Distributed state management is hard.
Testing
It's
them
hard,
really
but
hard.
it's hard, but it's getting more prevalent now. More and more applications
That's right.
as they try to go elastic, are starting to design for their own resiliency.
And I guess-
People have it's now changed where it used to be, it was worth it to buy a tandem nonstop and then write simple software. Now we've decided that actually the hardware, because the hardware is expensive, now the humans are expensive, but we have smart ones, and we just get them to write smart software and buy cheap hardware. But that's just a trade-off. We're achieving the same sort of outcome.
Yeah,
so we can
Just
we can achieve an outcome if we understand what it is that we're trying to do and what we're protecting against.
Which goes back to
the
data
only
protection.
I love I've always liked the idea of the writing to two places and all that, and writing to Azure and S3 at the same time or whatever. The only problem there is, when you
You more than
costs
double your
costs
cost.
a crap ton, right?
Which-
and I live in a world where I don't ever get to justify what I do by ROI, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, wait, you want to make 2 copies of it?
What's it?
So don't we
as-
already have 3 copies? We need
but how
6
many-
copies?
How many copies of our backup do we already make today?
27.
Right, tons and tons
Yeah.
and tons.
But taking the business perspective, and again, this is where IT and business are not each other's best friends, because IT sucks at making this a business decision. So I would say if it's too expensive to do this, then you don't care about the data that much. The problem with backup is it's generally insurance,
Yeah, well, and
which
when
means
we're-
that, and my house is burnt down, I'm
Not an
under
ROI.
At the fact that many end users are looking at cheaper ways to do backups because they care, but they don't have the money to. So, for example, object store
it's important enough,
is
you have
becoming
to-
an option for backup. And again, what happens if the object store has a bug?
Yeah.
But you use object store because it's much more convenient than many other.
No,
Of course, it's also convenient to delete it all.
Yeah.
I think practically what it comes down to is risk management.
Correct.
And yes, that cockroach that ate Philadelphia is possible, but it's really improbable.
However,
And so
the problem with that is the old black swan event. This is extremely unlikely, but were something that I haven't predicted, a cockroach or an alien comes in and abducts things,
So
what would that mean? So if that was
it means we'd go out of business, and it means we would go out of business, and I have to find a new job.
Yeah.
But protecting against it means that we'll be unprofitable forever.
In which case, I
In which
also have
case,
a no job.
in which case, I would also not have a job. So I would much rather risk the black swan event.
Yeah.
You have to.
Then
at some point,
definitely
you just
go,
have to
yeah.
go.
And it's just also not the only risk that you're protecting from, right?
Right.
So they're
Yeah,
like,
that's right.
I'm going to spend money here or I'm going to spend it there.
Yep.
And we don't have unlimited money. And
That's
what
right.
you're talking about sounds really, really improbable. So I'm going to go spend the money over here.
In which is fine, but it needs to be an explicit decision
And
rather than a
articulated,
decision
yeah.
made in ignorance or
Yeah.
just because I don't know what I'm doing.
And I think that for the object stores that I would install in the first place, that the odds of a cross-cluster multi-location bug deleting all my data are so small
Yep.
that addressing it isn't worth spending any money.
And I mean, I recall back in the Y2K bug thing, the solution is sometimes not a technological one. It's not an IT one. It's we will print out all of the customer account records and we will have a physical copy of it printed out so that we know how much money was in the customer's account at that time. If something goes horribly, horribly wrong, we start again with manual data entry. And we use manual data processing.
I think you just advocated having an offline copy or an offline backup on an alternate code base. I win. All right. Thank you very much.
So we used to try to apply a principle I would refer to as Murphy's Law in backups. And you always try to use Murphy's Law to your advantage wherever possible. So Murphy's Law in backups is if it takes you a lot of time and a lot of effort to always have a clean, easily restorable copy of your data from somewhere, you're probably never going to need it. If you don't back everything up, what happens is the Sisters of Fate look down upon your data every night and they flip a coin. If it comes up heads, you're good for one more day.
And do you remember when we
Yeah,
started?
there's a term in Yiddish for that. So making a kenahara.
Right. If you have to go out of your way to keep it safe, it's going to be safe.
And do you remember when we started using the duplication and there is the risk of the collision? It's one on I don't know how many billions.
Many, many zeros.
Yeah, and but at the beginning was a discussion all the time. Now no one cares. That risk of that collision is still there.
Yep.
Yeah, but that was
we
the
do-
same as the SSD wear out problem. It's fear of the new.
Yeah, but the same is for object
One of the
storage.
things that
We
irritates
care in
me
InfoSec.
about backup is, and recoverability is that if you write bad data to the array, no matter how many times you replicate it, it's bad.
Right.
It's broken, but you
Oh, no,
get to keep both halves.
that's the
Yeah,
problem.
so you
with,
get to
like,
keep bad
By
data
the way, you back it up, it's
multiple
not
times.
good either.
That's always been the problem with synchronous replication, because the last thing the Oracle database server does before it dies is corrupt all its data. And then that
Precisely.
synchronously gets replicated to your other site.
All right. I'm sorry, we have no solution then. Yeah. All right. We have thought of some good ideas, but let's move on with another roundtable.